Hello everyone, this is Bbeltdan and welcome to Blender. Today we are going to start a brand new series. As you read from the description, this is going to be the first part in a Star Wars series or a Star Wars build. So first off, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go ahead and prepare my scene. I kind of have my own ways of how I like to have this all set up. And also, while I'm doing that, we're going to be talking, let's talk a little bit about what we're going to be doing today. We're not going to be doing a whole lot of model building today, but it's just pretty much just primarily getting the scene set up, which, not only is, changing the layout to the way that I usually kind of like to have it look, but also is going to be about, setting up and how we're going to be dealing with the file system. Because well, what I'm going to be doing here is the scene is going to be an AT-AT versus an A-wing fighter in some sort of background, which I don't know exactly what the scene's going to be. Part of me kind of wants to go with the kind of the Hoth type, snow scene, but that seems a little bit too cliche. So I'm going to be trying to think about it. The scene is eventually going to be one of the last things that I'm going to be building, so I got some time to think about that. But however, though, with that being said, that means we're going to have actually several different models that we could look at. Let's see. There's several different models that we're going to have to be building here. I mean, we're going to have to build the AT-AT. We're going to have to build the, let's see, we have to build the A-wing. We have to build the background and everything like that. And there's several different ways of about how we could approach this. But I've already went ahead and made my decision on what I'm going to be approaching, and we're going to be looking at that today. What I mean by different ways of how we could approach it is that one way we can model everything all in the same file within the same scene. And to kind of get it to where it's a bit organized, I could like section off, like these four layers, for the AT-AT, these four layers here for the A-wing, these four layers for scenes, these four layers for lights, so on and so forth, and go through that. But eventually it's going to all be really, really cluttered. And I want to try to avoid that if at all possible. Plus, also, the file size might start getting kind of big. And as it gets big, it's going to be taxing on the memory system. So, the other thing that I'm going to do, or what I'm going to do, is I'm going to actually create several different Blender files, and each Blender file is going to be showing a different, not showing, but I'm going to be modeling in a different aspect of this scene. So one of them is going to be with the AT-AT walker, the other one is going to be for the A-wing fighter, and I might do there's definitely going to be at least a third one that's going to have the actual scene where everything's going to be come together. I just don't know if I'm going to do a fourth one that is going to be, do the background and the sky and everything in a third one, and then the fourth one is the scene, or the third one is going to also be the scene, and I'll just import those models in. But to bring them all together, do an import exports, but import export is if you want to put it into a different file, like a object wavefront file or a 3ds file or something like that, which comes in handy if you are making a model in here and you're wanting to do the renders into a different, besides Blender, a different 3D program. But since we're using only Blender, the two options that we have is going to be a link and an append option. Now, each one has their advantages and disadvantages, and I'm not going to go too much into depth on that in this video. I mean, there's tons of other YouTube videos out there that explain this in far better detail than what I probably could, and I don't want this episode to be too long. So I'm going to kind of give with the highlights on it. Now, appending is pretty much to where it takes a the objects in a file and it makes a copy of it and puts it into your file. And that object could be, well, let me go ahead and show y'all. So let's go ahead and let's make a scene real quick. I don't know, this is going to be real quick and dirty. So let's say I'm going to put in a cube here. So this is the top, this is the front. And let's go ahead and also do a armature. So I'm going to do a single bone. Let's go into edit mode, and let's go ahead and give this bone a couple of additional little arms to it. Now I'm going to select here, here. Y'all already know about all this. Do, oops, there, Control P. Let's go ahead and do empty groups. I know there's a better way to do this, but this is just the way I'm going to do it right now. Let's select these two and assign them to that bone. And I'm going to go in more detail later on as we go into this. Oops. There we go. I'm going to go more into detail of about how to assign, you know, armatures and stuff to meshes and all that type of thing. I mean, that's something that we're going to be doing a lot in this episode. I mean, these entire, not episode, but these entire series is going to be, you know, as covering several different aspects of Blender besides just the modeling. So let's go ahead and test it. Yep, we got it right where we want it. We can turn this around and it moves all around. And that's what we're wanting. So we're going to go ahead and save this as, let's go ahead and do AA test and save as a Blender file. And just to kind of keep the scene the same, I'm just going to go ahead and delete this. Object mode, delete this. And let's go ahead and do another mesh. Let's do a UV sphere. I'm going to put this UV sphere right. I'm going to go ahead and do another save as. We're going to save this one as a wing test. Now I could put in another file, but just to simplify this, I'm going to just leave it as such. So let's say if this was the A wing, the modeled A wing, and I want to now import in the walker that I just did in the other in the other file. I would go into over here to go to append, and I would select in the A test, and here I can go through and I can input just an armature, brush, camera, lifestyle, lamp, or what have you. Let's go into object, and we're going to select here and here. So we're going to select those two there. The cube was the cube where we started modeling off, and the amateur. I'm going to append from library. So I'm going to select that, and it brings it in. And this is a fully modeled, I mean, it retains all of its features. I can go in, select this, go into pose mode, and pose this around and everything. So it pretty much does what you would want. The downside to this is that, let's say, while I'm doing the scene in here, and I realize, you know what, I made a big mistake on the AA walker. The scale is off, the head is too big as opposed to the body, or something stupid, I gave him a bow tie or what in whatever, so I want to make some changes, but this is something that I'm going to want to do to the actual model itself, because let's say, like, if I'm doing this scene, not only this scene, but let's say I'm doing also with the same model, I'm doing an animation, and a buddy of mine has a laptop in my house and he's linked into my computer, there's other people that are using this model, and I want any changes that I make to the model not only to happen in this scene here, but all the scenes. If I go back to my original model, let's go ahead and save that for right now, just so we can see. If I go back to the original model and I make changes here, so let's make a couple of changes. I grab this one, move that there, check this one, move that one there. Go ahead and move that out there. Let's move this one in here and add in a couple of extra edge loops. So I make changes. I go into here, edit this, and I add an extra bone. Oops. Add an extra bone. So I save this. So, okay, good. We're saved. I made the changes. It's a funky looking AA, but that's what I want. But if I go back into the A-wing test, the changes did not carry over. So what I'd have to do is I would have to go in, select this, delete it, import, but anything that I've done posing inside here, or any changes that I've made in, posing it, I'm gonna have to redo the whole scene almost all over again, just because I made a mistake on the mesh. So to avoid that, We're going to go ahead and delete this and delete this. We can go into the link option. So I'm going to go into so we go into file, go into link, and I'm going to make sure I'm in that same file, which is AA test. And I'm going to select, I can select the same two. So here, link from library, and it brings it in. Just like how it did in append. But the difference is, if I go back into oops, yeah, there we go. A test, and I go, select on this, and I start moving stuff around like this, make a couple of additional changes. Let's say here, I actually prefer this to be here, this to be here, like that instead. If I make those changes, now if I go back to my original file, as we can see, those changes have carried over. See, all the changes that I've made have officially carried over into this file. So I can make changes in one file because it's constantly linking back to the original file. Now the problem is, and there is a way to get around this, the problem is I can't do any editing, can't do any posing, can't do any editing, and so this doesn't really quite work, you'd probably think, but there is a way around this. And what I'm going to do there is, and we'll go more into details on this when we get into those respecting episodes, but once again, real quick, just a kind of a brief little summary is if I go into here and I select everything that I'm wanting to use, and I do a G, oops, do an Alt Control G, I put everything into a group. If we go into the object file here, you can see that there's groups, and if I name this group AA Walker, it brings everything into this group. This should be in a group, that should be in the group, all under AA Walker is right there. Now if I go back to my original file, or the A-wing test, let's go ahead and delete this, and I link everything back in, but instead of object, I go to groups, and I select AA Walker, link from library, it brings it in. Now, it's still the same as of right now to where I can't make any edits, but if I was to select on this, go to object, because this is a separate group. As we see right here, it brings everything in. There's a group, A Walker, everything's going to be in there. If I select on this, go to object, and I go to make proxy or Control Alt P, all I want to do is select the armature because I just want to manipulate the bones, but I don't want to make any changes to the mesh. Any changes that I want for this mesh, I want to make in the original file. But for this scene, I'm going to want to move the armature around so I can pose the walker whichever way that I want. I'm going to select the armature. Now the armature is now editable in here. So I can go in and I can edit this into here. So if I go into front, and it retains all of its abilities to where if I start to pose this, as we can see, all the changes happen. But this I still can't edit. Oops. I put in too many things? I think I did. Or wait, no, I know what it did. All right. So all the changes here, I can go ahead and make. Okay, now it looks like what it's doing is that it's making another, oh, there you go. So yeah, so that's what I'm going to go ahead and do. I don't really know exactly those scenes about how it works. I just know that this works. So, okay, yeah, so what it does is okay, I see what it does here. But anyway, it works. So I can go ahead, move this around. If I select the other one, move that around, so on and so forth. So yeah, so that's what we're going to be doing. We're going to be setting up several different files for each one of the models that we're going to be using. First off, I'm going to be setting up the models for the AA Walker and the A-Wing, and then I'm going to go ahead and link them all into an additional file so I can make the changes with the AA, with the AT-AT Walk, with the A-Wing, the AT-AT Walker, so on, and with the backgrounds. And as I manipulate each one of those individual files, my main file that's going to have the ultimate render is going to show all those changes. So let me go ahead and set up those individual files real quick, and I will be right back. All right, everybody, I went ahead and got finished making the three files. As we can see here, we have the AT-AT Walker, an A-Wing, and the scene blend. And I've loaded in orthos for both the AT&T Walker and for the A-Wing into each one of these files. To kind of get started, in the scene file is going to be where we're going to build the scene up. So let's go ahead and go back into our AT-AT Walker just once again to kind of go over again what we're doing here as far as linking is concerned. I'm going to start off with we're going to do a little bit of modeling today, but not too much, is we're going to put a block into the scene. Shift A, mesh, do a cube, and let's go ahead and move this all around. So, okay, we actually put 0. The AT-AT walkers, I'm sure there's a lot of people that will agree with me on this. I mean, they've been such a favorite of mine ever since Return of the, or not Return of the Jedi. I am sorry, I just probably committed a big sin against sci-fi. Mixing up my Star Wars movies. Oops. Let's just go ahead and go into edit mode. Ever since I saw Empire Strikes Back and that Battle of Hoth, I mean, these things were absolutely awesome, and I remember playing these things or against these things on, even my old Nintendo system and even Super Nintendo system. And in Star Wars Battlefront, I mean, playing, it was always my favorite little, you know, modes to play is when you get to go in and really tear up these these AT-AT and AT Walker, blah, 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 blah. Actually, let's go ahead and, um, very important to know what the order of operation is here when you're designing these things. But we're just doing just a little bit of a light modeling, so let's just go ahead and I am forgetting which buttons do what here for some reason. Let's see, Control Z, and really enjoyed seeing them show up again finally in another movie. Whoops, within Rogue One, got to see that movie, and yeah, it was okay. It was different, and I liked it. Um, but at the same time, I wouldn't really call that my favorite Star Wars movie. Uh, I can go on and on of about the pros and cons, and I might do that in probably a different episode. But ultimately, definitely the scene with the AT-ATs, I really, really hold up. Okay, good thing I checked on that. But I really enjoyed seeing that. I think that was one of my favorite scenes in there when you saw the AT-ATs on that planet. I can't think of what it was called. Scale X. Um, but you get to see them again, and especially in a different type of scenery than the Hoth planet. And they were actually, I think they might have been slightly different. I wonder if there's any videos online, of maybe somebody going through. Oh, no, 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 yeah, no. Let's somebody going through and maybe looking at the differences between the two. I mean, I think there were. I think there was some differences as far as box is concerned. I think it was a bit more open-ended or opened up, but I can't quite remember. I need to go back and one day probably watch all that again. So let's go ahead and look at that. So we got the box, and we're going to go ahead and call this body. Just very simple. Let's go ahead, save that, and we'll open back up the A-wing. I'm just doing just very basic textures. The next episode we'll go in and actually start really kind of fleshing these out. Actually, I'll probably be doing it a little bit between This should actually, okay, it is set up for the front. Here we go here. And let's go ahead, do a control A, mesh. Let's do another cube. Let's go ahead and go into the object mode, center out that, center all these out, 0, 0, and 0. Okay, let's make it to where we can see our frame. Excuse me. Scale it down. Especially even liked it that you also got to see for once something else other than those crummy speeders, fighting those AT-ATs, because I mean it was kind of an unfair, in my opinion, an unfair representation of exactly how powerful those AT-ATs are supposed to be, because obviously the blasters on the snow speeders are nowhere near as powerful as blasters that are on a um, on a TIE fighter, and rightfully so. Let's do a control. Put one right about there. Let's actually scale this up a little bit. There we go. And yeah, it's very simple, but say we're just trying to get a point here. All right, so we'll call this a wing because it's primarily going to be almost all in one mesh. Do that. And let's go ahead, and when I forgot to do it on the other one, let's go ahead and group those. So add a group, a wing. Let's go ahead and save. Let's go back into, so I want to make sure I get this all out of the way now. Add group, AT Walker, there we go. File, save as. Now let's go ahead and open up our scene. And let's go ahead and link. Let's first go to the at Walker. Let's go to groups. And there we go. Let's go ahead. Let's go into camera mode. Kind of lightly, real quickly, like these. Not like these up, but kind of place these very quickly up into the scene. There we go. Now let's go ahead and, nope. File, let's link. And we want the, oops. Did I go on A-Wing? Okay, yes, I did. Group, A-Wing, link from library. Let's see. Top. Let's scale that down. There we go. And if we go ahead and go into a rendered mode, and there we go. So now they're linked. So if we go in and once again, we do edits into one model, it'll show up onto this, and we can do that real quick. So let's once again kind of show y'all what we're doing here. Let's go back into the at Walker. Let's go into a right side view. Let's see, what can we do here? Oh, I know what we can do here. Wireframe. Let's go ahead and put this spot in and scale these in right about there, and scale, oops. Oh, how does that go? Let's just, right now, let's just scale. Okay, okay, I see how that works. Let's just leave that right there, just for right now. So we got that. Let's go ahead, file, save, and go back into our scene. And as we can see, there we go. It makes the changes. So that's what we're going to be doing for this whole episode, or for this whole series, is make anything into a separate file and linking them into there. So I hope hopefully this kind of gives you an idea about how y'all can probably work with, work with scenes and everything. And hopefully y'all tune in for this whole series. I think y'all are going to enjoy this. And we're going to be looking at more than just modeling. I mean, we're going to be looking at texturing. We're going to be looking at animating, rigging. In rigging, I mean, we're going to be rigging, cockpits opening and closing, doors opening and closing, controls, whole bunch of different types of things. And a lot of this stuff is going to be kind of an advanced Blender modeling stuff, and I'm going to try to explain it the best that I can. But I'm more good, and as I show with my improper English, I'm better at actually kind of showing you things rather than try to explain, but I'll try to do the best that I can. So I'm going to go ahead and we're going to stop right now. So I'm going to work on a little bit of this on the modeling, at least try to get the basic blocks down on all of these objects so we can at least kind of get a good idea of, sense of scale, sense of, you know, um, sense of mass of everything of all these types of objects, all these type of models and stuff, off screen. So when we come back, you should see something that looks a little bit more like the AT-AT Walker and something a little bit more like the A-Wing fighter, and then we'll just go from there. Until then, I will see you in the next episode.